about the East, and especially with Paul George's injury, you take Indiana out of the equation. You still have to see if Derrick Rose is healthy. I would imagine if he can get back to what he was before, they would probably be the one team you kind of look at and say maybe they could make some noise. But I mean, right now, and they don't play the games on paper, and I know, it's been a long time for Cleveland, but right now, they sure look like they're in really, really good shape.
See, I'm with you, except I think it's going to take 2 years. I honestly think that it's going to take – I mean, even when that team came together in Miami, and I believe that at the time they did, that three was further along and more progressed in their career than this three are, with the exception of LeBron. LeBron's the interchangeable piece, but for that reason alone, even they had hard time in the first season getting through the West. But I'm with you, and Chicago's the thing. If Derrick Rose is, to me, I know it's easy because it's LeBron and Love to say that Cleveland's the favorite in the East. I still say if Derrick Rose comes back good as can be, I would say because they played together longer, that team would be the favorite to me, with Cleveland a close second, the way I'm looking at it. But you've got, I mentioned before, Charlotte, Washington, those young teams coming together. They're going to be looking for their opportunity too. So, I mean, there's going to be a handful of teams in there. But I think Chicago, to me, if I picked a favorite, it would be them based on time playing together and experience as a group.
Well, yeah, I can't disagree with you because that's what I said. Wade and Bosh were certainly farther along than Love and Irving are right now. But that said, I think the East as a whole, and again, we're talking 2 years for Derrick Rose now. So I kind of agree with you, but it's a big if he's going to be back, and number one, and if he's going to be back to what he was before all the injuries. So that's a wait and see mode. But obviously, Tom Thibodeau, if he's one of the 2 or 3 best coaches in the NBA, and that's another thing you have to question with Cleveland, is the fact that obviously the head coach is not proven, at least at this level. So you have to wait and see how that shakes out. And there are a couple question marks, but just from a pure talent level, I don't think there's any doubt the Cleveland Cavaliers are the best team in the Eastern Conference as we speak today.
It's going to be very interesting to see how this season and the next few shakes out. Like I said, I changed my opinion on the trade completely. I was not taking a risk if this guy was not going to say, hey, I'm sticking around. I mean, that's great to say, hey, I might, but might doesn't get it done if you change your mind. To me, that's totally different. You've now opened yourself up a 5-year window of competition here to put a team together that I can deal with much more than, hey, let's hope everybody decides to keep their word and stick together,
Well, I want to see, and I want to ask you guys, I don't know if anybody was down there today, but I want to see how LeBron looks, because I saw that one picture on Twitter, and he lost too much weight for me. I was starting to get concerned with this diet he's on.
No, I'll tell you what. I had some people that were down there tell me that that's not just like a certain camera angle or a certain picture that was taken. He's noticeably lighter. And interesting you brought that up. A lot of people concerned about that. I haven't gone too far into it. To me, I don't know. I always thought he was too heavy. I know people say that's what made him stronger than everybody else, but I always thought he carried too much muscle for his frame, too much, just slightly too much, and that may have led to some of his, like with the cramping and issues like that. So perhaps that, and knowing that there's a lot more movement in the type of style of offense that David Blatt likes to run, I think he obviously made a concerted effort to cut carbs and drop a lot of that. I think he'll get some of it back by camp, but you're right, it's noticeable there.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned with that, only because I think that's one of the reasons why he was who he is, and that's his physical dominance over people. And part of that was his size and his ability to move at that size. So that's the one concern I have when I saw that. And you never know, guys get into this mode, and I think if he loses some of that strength, that takes a little bit away from his game, because you're talking about one of the few people in the history of basketball who can, dominate basically wherever. You're talking about a guy who can play 4 different positions, probably 5 if he was forced into it, and if he loses some of that frame, some of that strength, all of a sudden going down on the blocks and beating up people on the post is going to be a lot more difficult because there's a lot of big guys in the NBA.
I agree. I mean, I know it seems to me to follow that, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, a lot of those guys kind of leaned out a bit, changed their physique slightly to accommodate the, growing older as you hit your 30s. But I'm with you. It was definitely something that kind of hit out of nowhere. Like nobody really saw it coming. Then boom, picture, and everybody's like, "Hey, LeBron just lost a truckload of weight." I'm joking. My man in the chat room, Sean here, he said that's his way of saying I ain't posting up again. That's what that is there. He's like, I'm done with that part of the game here. But yeah, that'll be something to keep an eye on. Speaking of that, you're kind of on the outside looking in. I love to bounce that with the inside perspective here in Cleveland. From what you've seen the first 2 weeks leading up to the first preseason game, what's your takes on the early reviews of what's coming out of Browns camp?
Well, it's going the way I assumed. I think they wanted to send a message early on to Johnny Manziel after some of the off-season stuff, and I think they did that. And I think as camp progressed, I think you've seen they realized that as much as they like Brian Hoyer, obviously Johnny Manziel's a first-round pick. He's a first-round pick for a reason, and that's because the physical gifts are far greater, and I think that's starting to come from the forefront. You're seeing, some of the first-team reps split up, and he's starting to inch up, and people are starting to say, if he plays well, maybe he can get some of that position. But I think one of the things I haven't seen discussed enough is the fact that, Hoyer's coming off the ACL injury, obviously, and, obviously he's been healthy and he's been practicing and all that, but there are two different levels to that. We saw it with RG3 last year in Washington. You could be out there playing, but that's an injury that basically takes a calendar year, most doctors will tell you, until you feel comfortable, and some will say 2 years until you get over that mental hump. So I think that's an aspect that not enough people have talked about because, it's a very, very difficult injury to get over mentally. There's the physical aspect of it, and that's the rehab, and that's the easiest part. But that mental hump, it can be very, very difficult, and I'm going to be very interested to see how he handles that. And certainly, this is the first week of preseason action, and it's the first time you'll get to see him as well as Johnny Manziel.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, he was the other day, he got hit the first time. Paul Kruger laid him down a bit, and Hoyer talked about that. He said, man, I was down, and for about 2 seconds, I froze up and thought, oh, man, this is it. And he goes, then I realized it doesn't hurt. I'm good. I jumped up, and he said, if anything, that made me practice better. And he was noticeably stronger that practice the remainder of the day. He said, man, that kind of reinforced to me that I'm good, and now I don't have it. He said, I was worried until somebody hit me what was going to happen. He said, so I'm kind of glad to get that out of the way. But that's, again, a concern, too. And that's why, even if I'm with you, no matter what, the Browns, no matter who was going to start week one, this preseason had to be about two separate agendas. One was getting the team ready as best you could to start, and the other was getting him ready, Manziel by him, ready to play at some point no matter what. Like, even sitting behind Hoyer as far as game days is not the same as getting him ready to play, because whether it's now, whether it's in 2 weeks, whether it's in 2 months or next year, he will be playing. You got to make the most out of this time. So I think either way, you're seeing that. And here with the quarterbacks, they named Hoyer the starter for the one, and I really thought that was the way it was going to go. I said one of them's getting game one and one of them's getting game two, and then whichever one looked best with the ones is going to get game three, and they're going to get the start of the season. And I think does it look that way to you too?
Yeah, I mean, early on I thought, after the all-season stuff, I thought when camp started, I really did think Brian Hoyer was going to be the starter week one. And, it's starting to creep into my head that maybe that's not going to happen now. And, that could be good or bad. You could spin it either way. You could say, Johnny's performed so well that he's put himself in the conversation, or you can say maybe they think Brian Hoyer's not ready. So you can spin it in both ways. But, again, after the all-season stuff, I thought Johnny would be too far behind. I thought that was the indication given by the organization when camp started, when they kind of sent him that message through Jimmy Haslam. And to his credit, he's done the things to get some first-team repetitions. But, again, we'll see what happens in preseason because, I can't tell you, since the new, collective bargaining agreement, training camp practices have meant less and less. They really have, because there's no two-a-days, there's very little hitting, there's only one padded practice per day, and a lot of guys, take them off because it's all about getting through the preseason as healthy as possible. But when you're talking about these teams that don't have an answer at the quarterback position, and certainly Cleveland is one of them. You could look at Jacksonville with Blake Bortles. You could look at Minnesota with Teddy Bridgewater. Any of these young quarterbacks who need to develop, and you need to see if they can play early on. These preseason games are more important now than they have been in the past because, as I said, the practice time has been cut so drastically. The hitting has been cut so drastically. So this is the only opportunity in a lot of cities you get to see these guys against live competition. Obviously, it's not the same as when things count, but it's sort of like practice was under the old CBA.
No, and I agree. I think that's going to go the longest way is, in Manziel's time. Really, it's not with him. I don't think it's even going to be as much as what he produces on the field. I think the thing that will keep him from not starting the season is not lining and he's still having problems with this in practice. Like, just everybody judges how many completions and his rollouts. One of the things, and this is what the Browns are looking at more than anything else, is getting everybody lined up right, picking up the blitzes, being able to change the coverages, all the different, switch your protections, all the different stuff. Those things are what he's working on, and that's why it's not just can he throw the ball further or can he throw through a different window than Brian Hoyer. If in week one he cannot go out there and not get himself blown up with a blitz, not get somebody else hurt, not have the team in the right position, then you have to wait, even if maybe you're tempted to go with him because there's not a big difference. That is what keeps Hoyer on the field. So I think, like you said, these two games here, it's not going to be who throws for more yards and touchdowns. I mean, of course, you're looking to move the offense, but it's going to be, does Johnny Manziel even have what it takes right now to lead the team, regardless of the results of it? Do you think I'm right?
Yeah, and that's been the concern since day one, even before he was drafted, from a number of organizations. I always tell people, if you look at the best quarterbacks in football right now, it's the same names over and over again. It's your Peyton Mannings, it's your Tom Brady's, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, guys like that. There's no question you need a base level skill set, is how I describe it, to play quarterback in the National Football League. But once you hit that level, it's not about having the Brett Favre fastball. It's not about being able to throw the ball 70 yards in the air. It's about making good decisions. It's about preparation. It's about being a leader, as you mentioned, and some of these things drive, the analytics people crazy, because you can't put a number on it, or you can't. It really is innate ability, and some of it is you either have it or you don't have it. And if you see the guys who make great decisions on the football field, generally not taught. It's generally in their DNA, so to speak, and they improve. Experience only helps, but it's generally the guys who prepare and have it to begin with who become successes at the NFL level. Again, once you hit that base skill set that everybody has. And I point out right now, I'll tell you, Jerry, if you line up the 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL on week